Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Backpack to Briefcase today. We are talking about communicating your weaknesses, that challenging, difficult question of what is your greatest weakness in an interview. We have Jessica Holmes with us today. She is the director of the Adobe Sales Academy and is responsible for developing and coaching the next generation of sales professionals. I firmly believe that sales is more than just a sales role, so I believe this will be applicable to anyone. With over 20 years in a variety of sales roles, Jessica believes that there is a science behind the art of selling and spends her days providing the tools, training, and technology that allows salespeople to focus on their craft. Additionally, she was awarded the honor of Mentor of the Year from the Women in Sales, as well as the Sales Manager of the Year from the Utah Women in Sales in 2022. First off, congratulations and welcome, Jessica. We're excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. And thanks to the Huntsman School of Business for giving me this opportunity today. Should we dive in?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, to get started, I thought I'd first share a little bit about me, my why, and how I got to this place at Adobe. So you can see down in the bottom left corner, I do have my LinkedIn QR code. Feel free to connect, ask questions, continue the conversation there. And we'll dive into a little bit more about how to communicate your weaknesses. So, as mentioned, I am a Utah native. I was raised in Salt Lake City. I attended Westminster College in Salt Lake, but I didn't take the traditional route. I didn't graduate college until I was in my mid-30s. So I had some life experience and some career experience before I got my education. And during that time, or over the past 25 years, I did a lot. I got married. I had a daughter. You can see on the screen here. She's now 22. She's married herself and navigating that world of adulthood. And within my career, it really gave us as a family the opportunity to live in a variety of states and experience different parts of the US. So currently, my husband and my dog, Paco, we are now settled in northern Michigan. I traded those highest peaks of Utah mountains for the expansive scenic Great Lakes and some frostier winter time. And then during my career, 20 plus years in sales roles, I've really spanned a lot of jobs, right? I went from inside sales to field sales, carrying that bag and traveling. I worked from home and on the road. I've also worked in corporate headquarters, building and leading sales teams. And I spent some time in my career in sales operations and sales enablement roles. But all of this time was spent in healthcare, services, and software sectors, right? I joined Adobe in 2018, coming up on 5 years. And I joined as an inside sales manager for a business development team based in the Lehi, Utah office. And as mentioned, I'm really passionate about helping sales teams achieve their goals and reach their potential. And what I loved is that Adobe really has provided me the opportunity to focus on our early career sales talent and helping them develop the skills necessary to be successful in their current role, as well as gain the skills to be successful in future roles. Excuse me. So after about a year as a BDR leader, I switched my focus from a very specific team of sellers and broadened my view to helping a lot more of the sales teams here when I was asked to lead the Adobe Sales Academy. In the middle of the screen, you can see my awesome team that I really couldn't imagine doing this job or having the impact that we do without these amazing team members. I am lucky to work with them and learn from them every single day. So that's a little bit about me and my why, and a little bit about Adobe and the Sales Academy. So in my current role, this really allows me to use my strengths, my prior experience as both a seller and a sales manager and leader, to help give our early career talent the experience and the exposure to gain those skills necessary to become the experts in their role, to perfect that craft. And our mission as the Sales Academy is to provide our field sales leaders with that exceptional talent, those people who can ramp really fast and produce immediate results. So if this is something you're interested in or want to learn more about, the URL at the bottom of the screen will give you a little bit more detail about Adobe and the Sales Academy. But let's actually talk about some of that advice or insights that maybe I can help you with on how to communicate your weaknesses in job interviews. This is definitely one of the toughest interview questions. And it really doesn't matter your age or your experience level or even what role you're interviewing for. This question can be asked of anyone at any time in any type of interview. So during our time today, I hope to shed some light on first, why do employers ask this question? And then how can you identify your weakness as it pertains to the role you're interviewing for, as well as how you should answer the question, and then some insights onto why and what interviewers are looking for within your answer. I'll also share an example or two of how to do this within the interview. So that question, what's your greatest weakness, is a really tricky one, right? If you're not prepared, it can really feel like an interrogation. Feel like they're trying to trip you up or bully you during this interview, make you sound weak, but that's really not typically the case as to why that's asked. When the question is coming from this place of curiosity and interest in you and your skill set, it becomes a question that helps us, the interviewers, get to know you, right? The human that has skills. We're great at things, we're not so great at things, and we know we have areas that we need to work on. If you think about it, you wouldn't expect your friends and your family to come into a relationship being exactly perfect. We can still respect and love people who have shown us their flaws or weaknesses. And this is also true for your teammates and your employees. So most likely, that question is asked to see how you answer it, right? How do you handle being asked such a vulnerable question? How do you respond to that? And it's not just about the answer you give, but it's also about your body language, your tone of voice, the attention and time that you're putting into thinking about and giving an answer, as well as your ability to be vulnerable, to open up, to demonstrate some self-awareness. Right? An interview is a very awkward and high stress situation. And then you pile on a question like this, and how you respond tells an interviewer a lot about you. Okay, so a little bit more about, we've talked about the why that question's being asked. We know you're not being tested. They're not being evil and trying to trick you. So let's take a moment to think about how you identify a weakness to discuss if you do get asked that lovely question. So again, being self-aware is a key skill that employers are looking for in any role, in any candidate. Self-awareness is something that we all strive to have in our employees. Let's talk about that for a minute. Self-awareness is the ability to focus on yourself, on how your actions, your thoughts, your emotions do or don't align with your internal standards. If you're highly self-aware, you can objectively evaluate yourself. You can manage your emotions. You can align your behaviors with your values, and you can understand correctly how others perceive you. It's really a skill that allows you the opportunity to identify your strengths, as well as areas that you're not so strong in. I love this quote at the top. A Forbes article put this into perspective by saying, a weakness is just an area that isn't a strength. It doesn't have to be terrible, right? It just isn't your strongest area. So how do you identify that weakness? Well, first of all, think of those things that just don't come naturally to you, that require some extra preparation. Think of projects where you might have done things differently in hindsight. What specifically would you have done differently? And can that be turned into an area of opportunity or weakness that you can talk about in this role? If you cannot identify a weakness, or you may be uncertain if you're being too hard on yourself, a little too self-critical, then you need to consult with some trusted members in your circle of influence. Could be friends or family members, or a professor or a manager, a previous employer. Think about the times talking to those professors. Have you received any feedback from a professor in class? Have you had any feedback or coaching from a manager in a previous role? Ask that trusted circle for feedback on what you've identified, do the work first, as what you think is a weakness, and then how that pertains to the role that you're interviewing for. And then listen to their feedback. Do they agree? Are you being too hard on yourself? Do they disagree? Or can they offer some additional clarity that can be used when you answer this question? And then you need to be very specific and certain that the weakness that you've identified is relevant to the role you're applying for. You need to make certain that it's something that is relevant, but not the critical skills of the role. You need to talk about a weakness that can be fixed or worked on, or that isn't critical. But talking about a weakness that isn't relevant to the role does not demonstrate that ability to have self-awareness. Okay, so how to answer the question, right? Let's picture this. You're sitting in that interview, the nerves and the stress of the opportunity or the excitement is getting to you. And then you're asked that question. Hey, can you tell us what is your greatest weakness? Right, let's talk about how to answer this question. And then reflect back on the why the question's being asked. Remember that the how you answer this is going to be just as important as what you say. Be mindful of your facial expressions, your body language, your tone, your pace when you're answering this question. This will really tell the interviewer a lot about you, no matter what you actually have to say. So you need to be confident. You need to be calm. And you also need to be willing to be open, maybe perhaps a bit vulnerable when you answer. You would want that same type of response if you were to ask the question yourself of someone else. So you've done the work, you've thought about this question, you've thought about a weakness or so that ties to the role, and you're aware of the skill that may not be as strong as some of your other skills. So you can be confident in how you answer this. And then to the message, the what you're going to say. There is a formula you can use when discussing a weakness here on the screen. And I do want to point out, this works for more than just interviews, right? Think about this when you're in a one-on-one with your manager. If you're asking for feedback on a skill development, talking to friends and family about areas in your life that you want to improve on. Now let's talk about how to answer it. First, you need to state the weakness. Be direct and be clear. Then provide some context through a story or an example in your professional life in which you've demonstrated or noticed the skill is not your greatest strength. And then describe how that perspective changed for you and any steps you have taken or plan to take to build that skill or correct that weakness. And then finally, you need to ask for feedback. How does your current skill level in that skill fit into the role requirements and the day-to-day job? Is this a deal breaker for them or is it not so much? If you can follow this formula, it really allows you to demonstrate your self-awareness, your ability to reflect, to take action, and then strengthen a skill, as well as your ability to take feedback or advice from any prospective leaders or teammates. If you really take the time and provide a thoughtful and relevant answer to the question, this is going to do a few things for that interviewer. First, shows your self-awareness. I sure hope you're seeing a trend here. It also demonstrates your authenticity and your honesty. You show professionalism and your desire to continue to grow and improve your skill set, your willingness to learn new things or to handle challenges, all while providing the interviewer with a very small glimpse into your understanding of the role and the requirements of the job and when you'll be successful in that. You know, hiring teams really have a very small amount of time to decide if you're the right person for the role. And so asking this type of question helps them with that, right? They want to know if they want to work with you, if you will help them and their team meet their goals, if you'll be a great representation of the team or the company, and then what it will take for the team to help you if you're hired. So by stating a weakness, using the example with context in a professional setting, and then talking about the steps you can take to strengthen that weakness, it really shows that you understand the differences between professional and personal skills and some discretion there. I read an article in the Harvard Business Review by David Galleries that really states this pretty clearly, right? How will this individual face challenges? Right? That's one of the things we're trying to figure out when we ask you that question. It also helps answer the questions of like, can you be honest? Can you stand up and say what's not working in a professional setting? Are you able to lean into the discomfort and be genuine and be honest? Right? Interview teams are really trying to identify if you're able to be critical, if you're able to tell the truth, even when it's difficult and it may be hard or even put you at a disadvantage. Right? Honesty and authenticity are traits that can't be taught, and they're cherished by employers and leaders. So think about it before you answer that question. Okay, let's actually take some time to go through some examples of how you may be asked this question and then how to answer it. So not all interviewers come out directly and ask, what is your greatest weakness? In a direct manner, you may find the interviewer is asking you for a weakness in some additional ways, right? Or they may be asking for more. Tell us 3 of your weaknesses. Oh, come prepared with more than one answer. Have a few examples and stories and context to share for each of those. You may find that they ask the same question in a more soft or less direct approach. Um, things like, you may want to know, tell me about a time when you were disappointed in your performance and what you did about it. What part of the job would be most challenging for you, right? Or think about it, on your worst day at work, when you came home feeling drained and frustrated, what were you doing that day? This tells us those things that are hard for you. You don't get excited about skills that are hard to do, right? We come home lit up and excited when we succeed and we see success and happiness in our role. So those days that you're feeling frustrated and drained help us and you identify the skills that may not be as strong for you. And then when you're doing your interview prep, you really need to make certain that you're focusing on the job description as well as any information that you've been given about the role to help you identify that area of weakness, or maybe a few, that you will be prepared to talk about in the interview. And you need to keep that weakness relevant, but again, not critical to the role. And this will help you stay confident in your abilities, to tell them that you can meet the job requirements, as well as give the interview the confidence that you know where and when you will ask for help or feedback, and that they can be sure that you can do the job. So on the screen is an example of the job description for a business development role here at Adobe. And when reading this was the potential role you're interviewing for, you'll see that there are both skills and characteristics that are listed. As an employer and hiring manager, I know I can teach and help you build skills that aren't strengths, but I can't teach character. So you need to focus your research on weaknesses in the skill category, not in character. Let's break it down a little bit. First, look for words that demonstrate skill and action and not character traits. You'll see those here in red, right? Research, generate, handle are all good examples of ability and skill. Words like self-starter, professional, trust, attitude, those are examples of character, right? You want to focus your answer to this, what's your greatest weakness question, on the skills and ability category, not the character. And you do need to remember, it doesn't have to be awful. It just needs to not be your greatest strength. So going back to that formula and how to answer this question, you'll want to state the weakness, provide an example, and describe how identifying this has changed your perspective. List the steps or actions you've taken or will take to strengthen this into a skill, and then ask for feedback from the interviewer as it pertains to the role you're interviewing for. For example, I lack extensive experience in whatever. I noticed this wasn't a strength of mine when I discovered this, I met with my manager, I spoke to my professor, etc. And then how to ask for that feedback. Hey, tell me, how does your team prioritize this skill amongst others when identifying a candidate for the role? Is this an area of opportunity that you and your team are proficient in and can help me strengthen my skills? You can ask this in a way that gets you clarity into the role and confidence in that you and the team make great teammates and can lean on each other and lean on each other's strengths. Okay, to wrap this up, I'm going to take you back to my job history. I told you all that at the beginning for a reason. So I'll give you an example of my time interviewing for Adobe. It was 2017. I had had years and years and some extra years of sales experience in healthcare technology. I'd spent many years selling myself or building and leading sales teams in this world where software as a service was very new. And I had this wealth of knowledge and information and how healthcare technology could really help doctors and the medical practices provide better patient care. I was passionate about what we were doing. I was an expert in my field. And then I was introduced to Adobe and the hiring team who was in search of a manager for their business development team. It was a job that I had succeeded in before. I'd built inside sales teams from the ground up. I'd successfully closed millions of dollars myself in sales, but I knew very, very little about Adobe. I didn't know our products well. I didn't understand their customers and the problems that they faced. And I quickly knew that this was a weakness for me. I really didn't understand their industry and their technology. How could I convince this company that I could do the job when I didn't even understand their businesses or customers? I didn't know much about Adobe. I knew, hey, you have a PDF reader and you're the people that create Photoshop, right? So what do you want with me? What do I have to do? I talk to doctors all day. Why are you spending time interviewing me for this role? And so as I read the job description, I networked with a bit with some of the employees at Adobe. And as I prepared for that interview, I had a few moments of clarity. The first one, one of the things I found was hardest part of software sales jobs is getting your prospect to see the vision, to understand the benefits and the value of the tool that you're providing without ever touching or feeling or trying it out first, right? You have to be consultative. You have to dig in and learn about your prospect, their pains, their needs, and then you've got to help them decide if your software can help solve the problems that they're facing. You don't go into every call knowing everything about your customer or your prospect. You have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to ask tough questions and be honest. And you may not have all the answers up front. And I did this every single day. I had taught many people how to do this successfully. And it was one of the most rewarding parts of my job. I am a fantastic learner. That is a strength I have. I love to learn, be challenged. I'm curious. I want to know it all. And I'm not afraid of asking questions. So that was my first point of clarity. The next thing I realized was that I was interviewing for a leadership position in which I was helping to develop sales skills in my team. That art of selling is pretty similar no matter where you work and what you sell. There's a skill set that's developed, a science to doing this well. And I had decades of experience doing this. I had the skill myself. I have developed it in others. I've led multiple sales teams to success. I knew the recipe to prove I knew how to do this. I had the receipts. So I'm a fantastic learner. I understand sales. I'm great at selling. And I finally recognized that my weakness was something I could turn into a strength. I'm not an expert in digital marketing tools. That wasn't an area that I knew, but Adobe does. They're the expert in digital marketing tools. So now I went into that interview knowing I needed to ask the questions of the interview team to see if they could help me, right? So that I could turn around and help them. What enablement and education would they provide to me to help bridge that gap in my skill set? Was having an understanding or previous experience in digital marketing tools a bigger priority for this role than having sales and leadership experience? Which weakness would be easier for the hiring team to help build into a strength? I went into that interview so much more confident, armed with questions to help me figure out if the company and the role was the right fit for my strengths, and if they were the right people in the right place to help me to continue my own personal development and learning. You know the answer already. I'll share with you that I did find a team that needed my experience and skills, while I found people who wanted to help me learn. I leaned into that discomfort and I was honest in sharing my weakness during that time. And I shared with the team how I had these strengths and the character to build this weakness into a strength myself. So lean into this when you go into those interviews. It's just as much your interview. It's just as important for you to find a place that will help you to continue to build your skill set and support you in your development. Make certain you do your research up front. Be genuine. Be a bit vulnerable and willing to ask the hard questions. Use the formula to answer the question, then ask for feedback and listen to how they answer. I hope this helps. Happy to take any questions that may be coming through.
I think this is amazingly helpful. Especially, I love this formula, Jessica, of being able to state, provide context. We talk about having interviews be opportunities to tell stories about yourself. So I absolutely love that. Our first question is more of a general interview question. We mentioned connection. So how can candidates strengthen their connection with an interviewer?
It's being genuine, right? Connecting on things that you may have in common or asking great questions, being curious about them to find that, right? We all want to be liked. We all like to have something in common with the people around us that we work with every day. So ask the questions to find that out.
Yeah. It's just as much about you interviewing them to make sure they're the right fit, right?
Yes.
It's awesome. Just want to remind folks that are watching, if you do have questions for Jessica, put them in the comments. We do prioritize those. We want to hear and help you, so feel free to comment below. All right, so a little bit of a silly question, but are there any absolute no-go answers to that question?
Yeah, if you didn't pick up on the self-awareness during all of that, I would definitely say it again. If you're answering this question in a place that is showing cockiness, attitude, belligerence, those are no-goes, right? Like, you confident and cocky are a very fine line, and make certain you're staying on the side of confident.
Yeah, hopefully that's a topic we'll address in the future, just to like avoid that arrogance. I know that can be a worry for some interviewees. All right. Now, turning it to the employer, is it appropriate to ask the company or the department about their weaknesses?
Absolutely. Don't you want to know if your strengths can help them, right? It's a team and we need to lean on each other, right? We need to cover each other's weaknesses with our strengths. You want that in your personal relationships just as much as your professional. So, yes, of course you can ask.
Great. All right. So one of my favorite questions to ask, and I think we're going to wrap up after this one, is are there any additional interviewing resources, books, podcasts, articles? You mentioned Harvard Business Review. Any other resources you think would be helpful for our students?
Yeah, I think the first resource that you should turn to is yourself. No one knows you better than you. You are the expert in you. So look inward first in how you're answering every interview question. Clarity with those answers. Talk to that trusted circle first. There's a lot of books and podcasts and news articles that can help you shape that guidance a little bit. I'm happy to share some of those after that help me give this presentation. But you need to make certain that the answer is genuine and authentic to yourself first.
And for those Huntsman students here, when Jessica gets back to us, we'll be sure to share those in a Dare Mighty Careers announcement or wherever we can. We're definitely about sharing information here at the Huntsman School. I think that's amazing. I'm a big podcast listener, so I know that there's tons of options out there.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, once again, thank you so much, Jessica, for joining us today. For everyone watching, our next Backpack to Briefcase is going to be happening October 21st. We're talking about thriving in diverse workplaces with some folks at General Mills who are Aggie alum. But thank you so much for joining us and tackling this difficult interview question. It's a toughie. It's one that it's kind of intimidating to talk about. So it was really good to bring some attention to it. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you for having me. Had
All right.
a great time.
Have a great day, everyone.